All right, we are joined with Drew Robinson today, the mental health advisor for the San Francisco Giants. Drew, thanks for talking to me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
First and foremost, your story is just absolutely remarkable. As someone who has struggled with mental health issues myself, just truly inspiring. So thank you.
Wow. That's all. I mean, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you being vulnerable like that. No, it's not easy to do. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm pretty open with that stuff. Yeah. So when people think of professional athletes, they think of these like high caliber players and not everyday people who also might be going through any mental health struggle. How do you think that we can normalize players undergoing mental health struggles and not showcasing that they're more than just kind of like these robots who operate every day, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like the education part, just creating a more understanding. And I think that's what's cool about people, especially high level athletes talking about it, because it is like creating education. And sometimes I get it. Like sometimes you see a bunch of different athletes talk about it. It seems like it's all that's being talked about. But realistically, that's only one person taking 30 minutes to an hour of their time, of their entire life, of their entire career talking about it. So for people who think it's still a sign of weakness, or for the people that kind of buy into the stigma and thinking it's all people talk about, it's all this, it's really just like everything else. It's just like an athlete's career. It's just the tip of the iceberg. So just creating the understanding that this is just a very short window of a person's life that they are willing to talk about these things, and then the rest of their life they can get back to all the things that people that believe in the stigma think they're avoiding with toughing it out or all these things. It's really just taking time to find that balance within someone's life and create the education that, sometimes while we're very fortunate and athletes are very grateful for their opportunity to play a sport for a living and live the lifestyle that they do, they also still have a lot of triggers. They have a lot of outside lifestyle things that create high levels of stress that every other person in the world feels. And it's not, the comparability part of all this is very relevant, because no matter what phase or what success you've achieved, wherever you're at in your life, everyone knows what the feelings of stress, everyone knows what the feelings of fear, second doubt, all those negative feelings, everyone knows what that feels like at some level. So just because you've gotten to a point of a pretty successful career doesn't mean that negates all the humane elements of just living life.
Absolutely. And yeah, in recent years, the stigma in professional sports or just sports as a whole has been on the decline. Though obviously with some hesitations, some athletes still suffer in silence. So how do you think like teams and organizations can kind of bridge that gap with athletes for the available resources that are for them?
Yeah, I think it's just a learning process. I compare it to the physical side of care, especially in baseball, because that's my upbringing. But as recent as when I first got into pro ball, it was a little bit of a stigma of not toughing through certain physical ailments, and then go back even farther. It was like a very judgmental thing to say that you couldn't play because of a broken finger or like a pulled muscle, and it was like very stigmatized. But now we got to the point where we have a full team of a lot of personnel to make sure that a player's physical being is at the best, and if they have a little, even if the smallest inconvenience, they have someone that's specified to help relieve that, and then hopefully that they're able to perform better at 7 o'clock. So I compare it to that because we've come a long way in that regard, and now we're starting to see kind of people start opening the door with mental health side of things. And I don't see why we wouldn't just continue that same process with the physical side of things, where we start getting full teams a part of every organization, which is already happening. The Giants, I feel like I'm really fortunate to be a part of the organization that was kind of at the forefront, especially in baseball. But you see it in a lot of sports. They're getting a lot of mental performance coaches, a lot of performance skills or mental performance skills, mental health. I mean, we have a full-time psychologist, sports psychologist, really kind of an on-call therapist right in the office, right next door to the training room with the Giants. So you go in and get your whatever treatment you need for a sore muscle, and then you can go right next door and talk about how your girlfriend broke up with you in the morning, and it's going to affect you. It's going to take your focus and performance later in the day. And it's just another thing on your mind. So I could try to compare it to the same side or the same direction that physical stigma took back in the, I don't know, 80s, whatever, 90s. And now we're on the track where people like Kevin Love, all these people really breaking down the barriers and making it realize that it's just a way to make someone feel better about their life, about themselves. And in turn, that's going to make a better environment for the people around them. So, and I know I kind of get off topic, not off topic, but I really think about this stuff and I really talk about it a lot. So I'm a deep thinker when it comes to this stuff. So I appreciate listening to you ramble a little bit.
Ramble all you want, you're good. Opening up and recognizing that you need help is such a moment of vulnerability. What advice would you have for like for any athlete who might be going through something, or even just someone who watches this and they don't know really where to turn to in terms of help?
Yeah, I think just trying to, and I hate saying the word just because that makes it seem like it's a simple thing, because it's definitely not. And I think that's why I've become so proud of athletes who are willing to put their careers or put their, anyone really, not just athletes, anyone who's willing to just be that vulnerable and say, I need help, because it's such a pride thing. Like, no one wants to admit that they don't have life figured out all the time. But when you think about it logically, it's really understandable to think that no one has life, every part of their life figured out all the time. So having this, like changing the perspective on it, of not thinking that it's a weakness or that it's a scary thing, which is much easier said than done, obviously. But if you can do your best to switch that perspective to understand that it's going to really create more strength, and it's going to be something you can be really proud of, because realistically, if you just keep trudging along and trying to push through this discomfort, you might get to a point that I did, which is what happened to me. So getting to a point where you think that your life is not worth it, it's just not worth holding on to things and hiding things for the fear that you might be judged, you might be misunderstood, or whatever the case may be. Which again, I understand those feelings so in the deepest level, because that's what I experienced at the realest level. But it's something that I've gotten to experience through other athletes, because like I said, I was so proud of Simone Biles, because like I said, she had the strength and the courage to do it before she got to a point that I did, which ultimately was trying to take my life. So the fact that someone is going to have something negative to say about someone putting themselves first, which again, the stigma of that being selfish is just like so mind-blowing to me, which is interesting to say, because at one point I was a part of the stigma. I was like thinking that it was selfish. But when you do something for yourself, the ripple effect of that is really taking care of other people. So the most things that people think are selfish, it really turns out to be a very selfless thing. Because when I step back at times, when I go through my depressive episodes and take care of myself, what I'm really doing is taking care of the people around me, because I'll be able to tend to them. I'll be able to show up and be more present with them, which will deepen our relationship. So I think that the fact that people are scared to do that, I think it's just kind of like the idea of switching that perspective to understand that what you're really doing is taking care of yourself. And you can get, like I said, you show some vulnerability for 30 minutes in 1 week or an hour. Go to a therapy session and talk to a therapist for an hour a week. And then the whole rest of the week, you can get back to trying to tough it out, grind through life, and get through the adversity in the old school way, which, like I said, it's needed sometimes. It's definitely needed to tough things out, but there's also a balance. Living on one side of the spectrum is only a recipe for disaster, like I found out.
Perfect. Think that was great advice. And then last season, you announced that you were retiring from playing and you joined the Giants front office as a mental health advisor. What does that role exactly entail?
Yeah, so I've been wording myself with my role as the bridge.
Ooh,
Played for parts of 12 seasons professionally, and I was in their shoes, and I know how apprehensive I was to, again, admit that I didn't know exactly what I was doing at all times. I didn't have the strength to admit that internally I was hating myself. I was hating the way I was performing. I only saw the negative. I didn't have the strength to do that. And I was so apprehensive to voice that to not only people I trust, but someone who is willing to like make a decision on me in my job and my career. And like I said, now with the Giants having a full-time psychologist at the major and minor league level, I'm just trying to promote their work, because now after everything that's happened, I've totally bought into that work, and I've benefited from it so much with Dr. Stan Alexander with the Giants, with Dr. Cheatham with our minor league organization. It's just the work that they do is so helpful and so comforting. And again, it's just another thing to take off their plate. So with my role, I just try to, for someone myself who's benefited from it, I'm just kind of like their hype man. I'm their bridge. I'm the starting line. I just try to go in and talk the baseball language to our players, which I know so well from playing for as long as I did, and letting them know what you're doing is really honorable, but at the same time, let's just try it. What's the worst that's going to happen? The hour's going to pass in the day, regardless if you're sitting here struggling or if you're actually trying to get some structured guidance from someone who's professionally trained to help you realize and help you process things. So I worded myself as the bridge and also starting line, because like I said, with my story being so public, and then being around baseball and being able to spark conversations from the environment we're in with baseball, I've realized that a lot of players feel comfortable with me because I've shown some vulnerability with my story and been so open about it that they're willing to ask me a specific question about my story or about what I've learned or what I went through. And then before you know it, we're in a 30, 40, 50-minute conversation about their life and about what they're dealing with. And then I kind of remind them, like, doesn't this feel really good to talk about these things? What if you did it now with a trained professional who's actually trained to guide you through this? And like I said, it's a really fulfilling thing because I get to watch people basically avoid getting to where I got to, or I see them learning from my mistakes and learning from the lessons I learned the hard way, and trusting me to guide them to someone who's going to help them feel more balanced and feel more really just better about themselves and better about life. And it's like I said, it's the most fulfilling thing ever. And I think that's why I was so comfortable with retiring in the middle of the season last year, because I knew I had this opportunity to impact people's lives in a way that was different than just going out and performing well in a baseball game.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier that the Giants, they have been kind of on the forefront as leaders in baseball, with an emphasis on mental health. And one of those advancements has been adopting Major League Baseball's first emotional support dog. And I'm pretty sure I read that your Ellie also played a role in that. So how do you feel that Willie, the emotional support dog, will better benefit players?
Yeah, it's so exciting. It's so cool to see, because it did come from me bringing my service dog with me last year during my attempt at the comeback and playing last year. It's just the most effortless energy, like good energy. Obviously there's some people who have fears of dogs, but for the most part, a lot of people, you just like catch your attention. And it's like the easiest way to smile. It's like the most natural mood booster ever. And they're just never mad. They're the definition of unconditional love, unconditional happiness. So we were seeing it happen last year in the game with Ellie in the locker room waiting for us, whether we won or lost. We win, she was a part of the celebration. Everyone was happy, like pick her up and dance with her and stuff. And if we lost, where it's usually like pretty somber, or like people are a little upset about the way the game went, like some players would come over and just naturally like almost sneak like a smile or a good time because it was that effortless. So the fact that the Giants are on board with that and went through the process of getting one trained and being tended to by our minor league psychologist with Dr. Cheatham, it's just so cool. And it's been really fun to watch the guys interact with them, because like I said, it's the most like humane or like heartwarming thing to see a grown man just naturally soften up a little bit and let out the easiest smile, or like go over and like give the full baby talk and cuddle with Willie. And it's been so cool. And like I said, it's just a quick little hit during the day where it's usually a pretty stressful environment of trying to perform at all times or trying to be at your best all times. It's just a quick little 10, 15 second up to a minute, however long they're playing with them. It's just a quick little like adjustment to get a little bit better vibe out of the player. And it's definitely working, because like I said, it's I see it, and we've been able to see guys really interact with them and enjoy having Willie around.
Awesome. And that's all I have. So thanks so much.